You ever felt as if you were fighting against the whole world? Each morning you wake up, the list of tasks grows longer, the weight of others' expectations presses down, and while you struggle to keep moving, it seems as though everyone else is pulling ahead. You stay busy from dawn to night, yet deep inside a troubling question rises. Am I truly moving forward, or just running in circles? The truth is, the problem is not that you haven't tried hard enough. The problem is that you are living in a state of reaction, endlessly handling one difficulty after another, without pausing to see the larger picture. The Stoics remind us that we are not defined by the storm around us, but by the way we choose to walk within it. Strength does not come from doing more, but from doing what is right at the right time, with a clear mind. And that is the essence of strategic thinking. Let us begin that journey now. 1. Understanding strategic thinking. When people hear the word strategy, many immediately think of thick military or business plans where generals or executives map out the course for entire organizations. Yet, strategic thinking is not some lofty privilege. It is present in the daily choices every one of us must face. From deciding whether to continue a broken relationship, to weighing a career change, or even something as simple as choosing whether to respond to an insult or to remain silent to preserve self-control. All of these demand a strategic lens. If we remain stuck in mere emotional reactions, we are easily swept away by circumstance. But if we elevate our perspective, seeing wider before we act, we begin to embody the spirit of a strategist. Strategic thinking, simply put, is the ability to step out of the whirlpool of the immediate and see the larger picture. The reactive mind sees only the fire in front of it, while the strategic mind sees the whole forest and asks, where will this fire spread? How will it affect the long path ahead? And is there a way to use it rather than just extinguish it? This does not mean dismissing small matters, but refusing to let them obscure the broader vision. A Stoic once emphasized that events themselves do not torment us. It is our perception of them that does. With strategic thinking, you learn to see each event not as a stone blocking your way, but as a brick that contributes to the road you are building. The difference between living reactively and living strategically lies in one's relationship with time. The reactive person chases the present, letting time drag them along. The strategist does the opposite. They draw time toward themselves. They do not let the day slip away by trying to complete whatever appears in front of them. They choose what is worth doing, what should be left aside, and what should simply be observed. This deliberate stance makes their life resemble a design rather than a chain of accidents. Strategic thinking is not overthinking, nor is it about trying to control everything. It is the practice of asking the right questions, stepping back to weigh consequences, and knowing that action does not always equal progress. You may move constantly and still go nowhere. By contrast, a single step in the right direction, however small, can change the entire journey. The strategist knows that it is not speed but alignment that determines the outcome. At a deeper level, strategic thinking is the harmony between long-term vision and present awareness. Vision without action is idle dreaming. Action without vision is nothing but firefighting. The strategist holds both together. They understand that every small choice, every modest action, is building a larger structure. They accept slow but steady progress, knowing that no enduring work is built in a single day. Stoic philosophy emphasizes self-mastery and inner strength. Applied to strategic thinking, this means you are not led by outside forces or impulsive emotions. When insulted, the natural urge is to retaliate, but the strategist asks, what will this gain? Does it serve the long-term goal, or is it merely soothing the ego for a moment? When presented with an opportunity, excitement may push you to seize it immediately, but the strategist pauses. Does it align with the path already chosen, or does it scatter resources? In this way, strategic thinking becomes the filter that allows us to live less carried away and more in command. There is no denying that strategic thinking requires discipline. It does not spring from innate brilliance, but from practice in viewing every matter in wider context. It demands that you build the habit of pausing before you act, asking questions instead of chasing emotions, and focusing only on what lies within your control. As the Stoics urged, do not squander your mind on what lies beyond reach. Invest your energy wholly in what is yours. This is the first step in transforming life from a series of reactions into a deliberate composition. Once you grasp the essence of strategic thinking, you realize it does not distance you from life, but rather draws you into it with deeper awareness. You begin to see that even ordinary choices carry weight. A single word, a financial decision, the way you spend an hour all shape the future. And instead of living passively, you learn to take the wheel. You may not always know the exact destination, but you are certain the road you walk has direction. 2. The 3 core capacities. To cultivate genuine strategic thinking, we need more than awareness and vision. We must also train 3 essential capacities. These are the pillars that transform theory into practice, helping us escape the spiral of reactivity and enter a state of deliberate action. They are pattern recognition, scenario envisioning, and self-positioning. When these 3 operate together, they give us the strength to see further, prepare more carefully, and choose more wisely in every situation. The first capacity is pattern recognition. In any realm society, economics, or human behavior, there are cycles, repetitions, and hidden laws at work. The strategic mind does not get lost in isolated events, but observes to discover the recurring threads, the rhythms beneath the surface of chaos. By realizing that much of life is not random, they can forecast the next steps with reason. This echoes the Stoic principle that the universe runs by order, and the wise live in alignment with that order rather than fighting against it. When you train your eye to see patterns, you begin to distinguish between fleeting incidents and enduring trends, thus avoiding overreaction to the temporary and preserving energy for what truly matters. The second capacity is scenario envisioning. A strategic thinker never prepares for only one outcome. They understand that reality is fluid and that every plan may be disrupted, so they construct multiple scenarios, from the most likely to the rare and extreme. When disruption comes, they are not shaken, for they have rehearsed it many times in the mind. Just as a fighter trains with countless moves in the gym so that no situation on the battlefield can unsettle him, the strategist prepares by envisioning every possibility. This is the modern practice of premeditatio malorum in Stoic philosophy, anticipating adversity to lessen its shock and face it with composure. Such foresight prevents life from catching one off guard. Instead, one learns to accept outcomes as scenarios already considered, and thus maintains calm while choosing the right course forward. The third capacity is self-positioning. If pattern recognition reveals cycles and scenario envisioning prepares us for disruption, then self-positioning is the art of choosing where to stand in a shifting world. The strategist knows they cannot control every force, but they can choose their ground where to invest, which skills to develop, which relationships to nurture. They do not fight to win every small skirmish. Instead, they place themselves where long-term advantage will grow. Like a master chess player, they focus not on immediate gains, but on controlling key positions, which eventually secure victory. Stoic thought also reminds us that true strength comes from holding firm within, regardless of external upheaval. When you learn to position yourself, you are no longer tossed by constant change, for you stand on solid ground with clear direction. When these three capacities unite, they form a complete circle. Pattern recognition lets you see order. Scenario envisioning equips you for surprise. Self-positioning gives you the foundation to act on both. Missing any one of the three leads to imbalance. Recognizing patterns without envisioning scenarios leaves you unprepared when disruption arrives. Envisioning without positioning leaves you lost among possibilities without an anchor. Positioning without recognition or envisioning leaves you fixed in place, unable to understand why the world keeps shifting. Thus, these three are inseparable, forming the triad that turns strategic thinking from a concept into a living practice. Strategic thinking demands steady discipline. Each day you can practice recognizing patterns by noticing recurring events around you. Practice envisioning scenarios by asking what might happen next. And practice self-positioning by regularly reviewing your place, role, and long-term aim. The Stoics believe that initiative in thought and action is the root of inner freedom. When you no longer let circumstances dictate your course. When you know where you stand, what to expect, and how to use the right moment, you have escaped reactivity and stepped into authorship of your own life. In the end, the three core capacities of strategic thinking are not abstract knowledge, but practical skills available to anyone. Recognize to see order, envision to prepare, position to stand firm. When you master these, you will find that life, though full of change, is not chaos. For with strategic thinking, you do not merely endure, you shape the road ahead, step by step, with calm and certainty. This is precisely the spirit Stoic philosophy has always taught. Act not from impulse, but from clarity in each moment of living. 3. The practice of self-reflection. To practice strategic thinking, the first step is not drafting grand plans or seeking complex tools, but learning self-reflection. For if you do not know where you stand, how you act, and why you act, then any strategy becomes an empty shell. Self-reflection is the ability to observe yourself as if from outside, reviewing decisions, reactions, and recognizing whether you are living strategically or merely carried by habit and impulse. The Stoics emphasized that a mind that never questions itself is led by illusions and emotions, while a mind that reflects learns to distinguish between wise choices and mere impulses. The first exercise in self-reflection is to write down your recent decisions. Choose 3 that had significant impact on your work, relationships, or life direction. Once listed, analyze the true motives. Did you act from fear, from anger, from haste, or from data and long-term reasoning? In doing so, you force your mind to see the roots, not just the surface results. With honest answers, you will notice that most daily actions are driven by immediate emotions, and this is the weakness that must be trained to change. The next exercise is to rewrite those decisions as if you had the chance to make them again, this time with strategic thinking. Imagine yourself as a calm observer, unshaken by the pressure of the moment. You will likely write down choices less appealing emotionally, but more enduring in outcome. The very act of rewriting is itself training for the mind. It places the brain in a simulated state where it learns to pause, calculate, and weigh before deciding. Repeated often, this becomes a workout that strengthens the muscle of strategy. An important part of self-reflection is confronting the truth that we often confuse busyness with progress. Many believe that doing more means living effectively, but with careful recording and review, you may realize you are spinning in small tasks without moving closer to long-term goals. Thus, in your self-reflection, add one small step. Write down not only the decision, but also its result. Ask yourself, did this result bring me closer to my long-term goal, or did it only give me short-lived comfort? Seeing this distinction clearly will show you where your approach needs change. Additionally, combine self-reflection with the Stoic principle of distinguishing between what can be controlled and what cannot. When writing down a decision, mark which parts were within your influence and which were not. If a decision was made mainly to change what you cannot control, it is not strategy but illusion. But if a decision focused energy on what you can command, then it is a solid step. This habit prevents wasted effort on the futile and reinforces true agency. Self-reflection can also take the form of comparing two columns. On the left, how you actually reacted. On the right, how you could have acted strategically. When the difference appears on paper, the gap between current state and desired state becomes clear. This matters because the mind often deceives us into thinking all is fine. Yet in writing, the truth emerges plainly. And it is this clarity that opens the door to change. Over time, self-reflection does more than review the past, it shapes how you approach the future. Once the habit is firm, you will find yourself pausing more often before acting, asking, is this an impulse or a strategic choice? That question, repeated often, becomes a shield against reckless errors. And as you begin to act from awareness instead of emotion, you will notice the shift from living passively to living deliberately. Self-reflection is the foundation for cultivating strategic thinking. It requires no complex tools or academic theories, only honesty and discipline with oneself. By rewriting, analyzing, and reconstructing decisions, you create a new mental framework where every action is filtered through reason and long-term purpose. This is the essential first step in building a life of direction rather than drift. Once self-reflection becomes a habit, you will see the difference clearly. Instead of being carried by the current, you are choosing the current, and that is the essence of a strategist. 4. Foundational principles. For strategic thinking to truly take root in life, we need a system of foundational principles. These principles act like the skeleton that supports all thought and action, keeping us from being swept into the chaos of the moment. They are not lofty theories, but simple, firm rules that shape every decision, large or small. Without them, strategy degenerates into quick reactions or clever calculations, but never becomes an art of living. The first principle is balancing long-term vision with short-term action. Many fall into the trap of either obsessing over distant dreams or focusing only on what lies directly ahead. The strategist knows both must be held together. Vision gives direction, while action builds concrete progress. Every small daily choice is a brick laid in the larger structure. If you care only for the present, you fall into the endless loop of busyness. If you dream only of the future, you never bring vision to life. Strategy demands both clarity in the present and loyalty to long-term goals. The second principle is adaptability. Reality is always shifting, and no plan holds if it pretends to be unchanging. A map is only useful if it matches the terrain. When the world changes, an effective strategy must adjust. This is not weakness or lack of resolve, but flexibility that keeps long-term goals reachable. History is filled with failures born of clinging to old plans while the environment moved on. By contrast, those who observe, read the signs, and pivot in time endure and advance. In the Stoic spirit, this is acceptance of impermanence while keeping the inner core firm. The third principle is looking beyond immediate consequences. Every action sets off a chain of results. The reactive person stops at the short-term gain. The strategist looks several steps further. They ask what follows after the first choice and what comes after that. Wisdom lies in knowing that quick success may be the seed of long defeat, while a temporary setback may unlock lasting advantage. Thinking in second and third order effects saves us from obvious traps and widens the view so that we not only win today, but also sustain advantage tomorrow. This echoes the Stoic warning. Do not let the lure of instant results blind you to enduring consequences. The fourth principle is risk management and focusing on what can be controlled. One of the greatest illusions is believing we can command every outcome. The strategist avoids this trap. They classify risks into two kinds, those that can be anticipated and prepared for, and those entirely unknowable. For the first, they build contingencies, conserve resources, or strengthen the mind. For the second, they accept it as part of life's game. This composure is rooted in Stoic thought. We do not control events, only our responses. By investing energy in what is within reach, we grow stronger instead of exhausted by futile struggle. The fifth principle is decisive prioritization. The modern world overflows with opportunities, but not all deserve pursuit. The strategist knows resources, time, energy, attention are finite. So they select a few endeavors of greatest impact and abandon the rest. The 80-20 principle is not just a productivity trick, but a philosophy of life. A small fraction of actions drives most of the results. By holding firmly to priorities, the strategist avoids scattering themselves in the world's endless noise. They understand that saying no is also a form of strength, sometimes more important than saying yes. Placed side by side, these principles form a resilient network. Vision and action, adaptability and steadiness, short and long-term consequences, control and acceptance, choice and renunciation. This balance is what turns strategy into an art of living rather than mere tactics. The Stoics taught that our character is not measured by how many times we react, but by how consistently we stand in chaos. That is the deeper purpose of foundational principles, to hold us steady amid change, to act from reason rather than emotion, and to build a life not only effective, but also meaningful. 5. Critical thinking, the mirror of the inner self. On the journey of building strategic thinking, one of the most important tools is critical thinking. It is not merely the ability to analyze logic or find flaws in arguments, but a mirror of the inner self, forcing us to confront the hidden assumptions within. Without critical thinking, we are easily bound by existing beliefs, deceiving ourselves with what we want to hear, and ultimately making decisions on illusion rather than truth. The Stoics emphasize that wisdom does not lie in accumulating knowledge, but in asking the right questions that strip away deception and reveal the essence of things. Critical thinking begins with the ability to set aside personal beliefs and view matters from multiple angles. The human mind is ruled by confirmation bias. We seek evidence that supports what we already believe and dismiss or reject what contradicts it. For this reason, many strategies fail not from lack of data, but because decision-makers refuse to face unfavorable data. Critical thinking requires breaking this loop, daring to ask, what if I am wrong? Is there evidence that disproves what I believe? Only when we dare to ask this can we escape the trap of self-satisfaction. Another vital part of critical thinking is distinguishing between cause and effect. People often link events with what looks like logical connections, but are in fact coincidences. When a result occurs, we instinctively blame the nearest action while ignoring deeper underlying factors. The critical thinker pauses to ask, is this a real cause and effect relationship or just the convergence of many influences? They know that a strategy built on false assumptions only leads deeper into dead ends. Critical thinking also includes the art of asking inverted questions. Instead of only asking how to succeed, they ask what would surely lead to failure. Instead of only asking which solution is right, they ask where is this hypothesis wrong? This reversed approach prevents blindness from a single perspective and opens possibilities we had never considered. The Stoics reminded us that true wisdom is not clinging to one viewpoint, but adjusting when we see we are wrong. This flexibility allows one to remain clear even in complexity and contradiction. Another key element is clarity in language. Often we think we are practicing strategic thinking when in truth we are drifting in vague concepts. Phrases like, "I want to be better," or "I need to be more efficient," carry no power, for they lack definition. The critical thinker knows that vague language is the enemy of wise decision-making. They force themselves to clarify, what exactly does better mean? Measured by what? Within what time frame? Precision is not dryness. It is the foundation for purposeful action. When words are clear, thought becomes sharp, and strategy gains a ground to stand upon. Critical thinking also requires intellectual humility. This is the willingness to admit mistakes, correct course, and let go of beliefs that no longer serve. The Stoics never saw error as failure. They treated it as a chance to move closer to truth. This humility is the shield against the arrogance of the mind, which so often clings to personal opinion at all costs instead of seeking clarity. When we dare to admit I was wrong, we build a sustainable strategic mindset, one not locked in stubbornness. Critical thinking is a discipline of life, not confined to great decisions, but present in daily moments. Each time we make a choice, we can ask, could what I am thinking be misinterpreted? Is there evidence I have ignored? If I looked from the opposite angle, what would I see? These questions are like mirrors, uncomfortable at first as they expose flaws, but over time they nurture growth. In sum, critical thinking is a mirror of the inner self, reflecting clearly the strengths and weaknesses of our thought. It forces us to pause, question, test, and refine continually. When critical thinking becomes habit, we are no longer defeated by our own illusions. Instead, we walk the strategic path with clarity and firmness. This is the Stoic spirit, not seeking victory in argument, but seeking truth so that we may live with direction and inner clarity. 6. The art of decision-making. If critical thinking is the mirror that reveals false assumptions, then decision-making is the act of turning that awareness into concrete action. Choosing is not simply picking between options, but the convergence of reason, discipline, and vision. In life, even seemingly small decisions can shape long-term outcomes, which is why learning to choose wisely is at the heart of strategic thinking. The Stoics reminded us that we do not control results, but we control the process of choice, and it is there that the character of a person is revealed. The art of decision-making begins with clarity of purpose. Most mistakes arise because we enter choices without truly knowing what we are pursuing. When goals are vague, any outcome can easily lead us astray. Thus, defining goals that are specific, measurable, tied to personal values, and time-bound is foundational. A clear goal is like a lighthouse, guiding us through the fog of countless options. Once we know what matters most, other choices lose much of their allure. The next step in this art is filtering noise. In our age, we confuse knowing much with understanding deeply. Surrounded by endless data, we often chase more information instead of acting. The strategic mind does not drown in excess. It focuses only on data directly relevant to the decision. This is not disdain for knowledge, but wisdom in discerning what truly illuminates the problem, rather than letting data become fog. Decision-making also requires defining the true nature of the problem. Often people try to solve the wrong question, and so every solution is misaligned. The strategist asks, what is the root issue? Am I addressing symptoms or the core? Reaching the root prevents wasted effort on measures that soothe the surface but change nothing essential. A strategic decision always begins by reframing the question correctly, not by rushing to answers. Once the problem is clear, decision-making turns to weighing options rationally. Instead of relying on instinct or fleeting emotion, the strategist uses defined criteria such as cost, time, risk, long-term value, and degree of control. Comparing choices against preset criteria keeps us from the traps of emotion and makes decisions transparent. This is how reason becomes a compass, guarding against the pull of short-term attraction. Another crucial factor is risk management within choices. No decision is without risk, and wisdom lies in weighing probabilities and expected values. The strategist does not seek to eliminate risk at all costs, but to prepare so that when risk strikes, it does not destroy the whole system. They judge what is worth the gamble, what must be avoided, and accept that even a wise decision may yield poor results, but it will still be grounded in logic and defensible. Decision-making also requires distinguishing between reversible and irreversible choices. Some decisions can be tested, measured, and adjusted without heavy cost. For these, agility matters more than perfection. But for life-defining irreversible choices, patience and calm are supreme. The Stoics taught us that when emotions rise, that is the moment to pause, for decisions made in haste rarely belong to reason. Finally, the art of decision-making requires reflection. Every choice, whether it leads to success or failure, is a chance to learn. Recording the reasons, data, emotions, and outcomes of each decision slowly builds a store of valuable experience. Those who never look back repeat the same mistakes. Those who think strategically treat every choice as a brick in building a stronger framework of reason. Decision-making is the union of clarity in goals, sobriety in analysis, rationality in choice, and humility in learning. It does not promise perfection in results, but it ensures that every step is conscious, every action tied to vision, and every outcome, whether gain or loss, becomes part of growth. This is the spirit of strategic thinking and the core of Stoic philosophy. We do not control fortune, but we always control the way we choose. 7. Interdisciplinary thinking. In The Cultivation of Strategic Thinking, there is a special capacity that helps us break free from the limits of linear thought. Interdisciplinary thinking. This is the ability to view problems not only from one familiar frame of knowledge, but through the connections between many different fields. Instead of being confined to a single perspective, interdisciplinary thinking opens new spaces where ideas that seem unrelated complement one another, creating solutions that are both creative and practical. The Stoics reminded us that true wisdom is the ability to see the world from above, where all things are perceived as parts of a single whole. At the core of interdisciplinary thinking lies the power to connect scattered fragments into a larger picture. The world does not exist in separate boxes, yet people often trap themselves within the borders of their own specialty. When we look only through one lens, we miss signals from elsewhere. By contrast, when we train the mind across disciplines, we learn to observe broadly, combining seemingly unrelated elements into a new structure of meaning. This allows us not merely to react to problems, but to anticipate the deeper currents beneath the surface. Another important aspect is the capacity for metaphorical transfer. Every field has its own language, principles, and systems, but when we apply these principles to another field, we can see hidden patterns. This expands the mind's ability to connect, turning complexity into clarity and revealing subtlety in what seems simple. In this way, interdisciplinary thinking enables us to observe the same matter through many lenses, finding pathways others often overlook. Interdisciplinary thinking also nurtures intellectual flexibility. A person who relies only on familiar tools is trapped when those tools no longer fit the problem. But one who sees widely always has more options. They can set aside the habits of their own field and experiment with approaches drawn from another. This attitude not only creates solutions, but shields us from rigidity. Such flexibility is the foundation for resilience in a world of constant change. The essence of interdisciplinary thinking also lies in the willingness to learn beyond the familiar. When we read, listen, and study only within our own field, the mind becomes closed. But when we step into other domains, even those far from our daily work, we train the brain to build new connections. These connections do not appear immediately, but over time they become invaluable capital. And in moments of difficulty, the mind unexpectedly combines these fragments into unique solutions. A key habit for cultivating interdisciplinary thinking is asking multidimensional questions. Instead of only asking how to solve this, we may ask, what would I see from another angle? If the context changed, would this problem still exist? Or what can I discover if I apply principles from another field? These questions break the monotony of one-dimensional thought and expand the map of our knowledge. Interdisciplinary thinking also offers a more holistic view of life itself. In the Stoic spirit, the universe is a unity where all events are interwoven in the same flow. Training the habit of looking through many lenses is, in essence, learning to live closer to this truth. We realize that nothing stands apart. Every action ripples through the larger web. This recognition not only makes our decisions wiser, but also deepens our responsibility to ourselves and to others. Interdisciplinary thinking is not merely a skill, but a way of living. It urges us to step beyond the safe borders of specialization, to seek connections between fragments of knowledge, and from them to create solutions that are deeper and more enduring. When it becomes a habit, we are no longer bound by narrow frameworks, but see the world with open eyes, linking the small with the vast, weaving fragments into a meaningful whole. This is the path by which strategic thinking becomes a living art of creation, while remaining rooted in the clarity and awareness of Stoic philosophy. 8. Turning ideas into action. One of the greatest traps in strategic thinking is stopping at the level of ideas. Many can think far ahead, craft elaborate plans, and even hold long-term vision, but all of it remains in the mind or on paper. Without action, even the deepest ideas are illusions. The Stoics emphasized that wisdom is not measured by what we know, but by what we do. It is action, not thought, that is the final measure of value. For this reason, strategic thinking must be made alive by learning to turn it into concrete, repeatable, and measurable action. The first step is translating goals into measurable outcomes. When a goal remains vague, the mind easily postpones it, treating it as unnecessary to act upon. But when we break it down into specific steps with clear criteria for evaluation, action becomes possible. A strategic goal cannot simply be to be better or to go further, but must be expressed in concrete indicators that can be verified. This separates dreams from plans and creates the basis for transparent progress tracking. Next comes the principle of prioritizing actions with the greatest impact. In practice, not every task is worth the effort. If we spread our energy evenly, the result is fatigue without progress. The strategist knows that a few key actions drive most of the outcomes. Thus, it is crucial to identify the levers where small effort produces large results. With priorities clear, turning ideas into action becomes simpler and more effective. Another indispensable factor is structuring time and maintaining disciplined follow-through. Ideas are often abandoned, not because they lack value, but because we fail to bind them to a concrete timeline. Strategic thinking requires managing pace, setting deadlines, defining phases, and reviewing progress regularly. This discipline prevents procrastination and ensures early correction when we drift, before small deviations grow into major errors. To turn ideas into action, we must also accept the imperfection of beginnings. One common reason people fail to act is the demand for perfection from the start. They wait until plans are flawless, conditions ideal, and success nearly certain. But the world never offers such certainty. The Stoics taught us to begin with what is at hand and let action refine itself. A first draft may be clumsy, but it is far better than a perfect plan never acted upon. Another crucial element of strategic action is feedback and continuous improvement. Every step must be checked against whether it brings us closer to the goal. If not, adjustments are necessary. Action is not a straight line, but a cycle of trials, reflections, and corrections. Through this loop, ideas gradually take form as reality. This is the difference between strategic action and impulsive action. The former adapts, the latter repeats mistakes. Turning ideas into action also means building systems that sustain motivation. Motivation cannot rely on fleeting inspiration, which fades quickly. Instead, it requires a system tracking progress, rewarding milestones, and enforcing steady discipline. With a system in place, the journey continues regardless of moods or obstacles. The system carries the effort even through fatigue or hardship. To move ideas into action requires honesty with oneself. If we do not face the true reasons we delay, plans remain trapped on paper. Honesty here is not self-blame, but recognition of habits, laziness, and fear of failure, and the willingness to overcome them. The Stoics believe that discipline is freedom, for only when we rule ourselves do we live by will rather than by the pull of emotion. Turning ideas into action is the essential step for strategic thinking to become reality. It is the union of clear goals, right priorities, disciplined time, acceptance of imperfect starts, continuous feedback, sustained systems of motivation, and inner honesty. When these elements come together, ideas cease to be promises of the mind and become tangible results in life. And in that moment, we truly step onto the path of the strategist, not only thinking far ahead, but acting steadily to turn vision into reality. 9. The power of adaptability. No matter how carefully designed, a strategy becomes useless without adaptability. The world is always in motion, and every plan only reflects a fragment of reality at the moment it is created. As circumstances shift, initial assumptions are easily broken. Adaptability, therefore, is the quality that ensures strategic thinking can survive and maintain value in life's constant flux. The Stoics reminded us that the universe is in perpetual change, and one can only stand firm by adjusting to its flow without losing their inner essence. At its core, adaptability is flexibility in thought and action. Many people fail not from lack of resolve, but from rigidity. They cling so tightly to a plan, a belief, or a method that they no longer see the world has changed. Adaptability does not mean abandoning principles or living without order. It means holding fast to what is essential while adjusting what can be altered. It is the ability to distinguish between the core and the superficial, between what must remain firm and what must bend. Adaptability is also tied to sensitivity and detecting signals of change. The world never shifts all at once, but always whispers before the wave arrives. Those with adaptive thinking are observant, attentive, and alert to subtle movements. They do not wait for crisis to strike, but read the currents early, even when they appear as ripples. This is the difference between those who always lag behind change and those who move ahead of it. Another vital element is preparing multiple scenarios. Instead of staking everything on a single path, the adaptive mind always creates contingencies. They understand they cannot control all variables, but they can prepare so that surprises do not leave them helpless. This mindset grants calm, for they have already trained both their plans and their minds to meet different outcomes. Such readiness becomes the foundation of confidence amidst change. Adaptability also requires courage to let go of the old. Many see signs of change, yet stubbornly cling to what is familiar, fearing the need to begin again. But blind persistence often leads only to wasted time and energy. Those who adapt are willing to release what no longer serves. They do not see change as failure, but as a natural shift that brings them closer to long-term goals. To cultivate adaptability, the mind must remain calm in chaos. Change always brings strong emotions: fear, anger, confusion. If emotions rule, we react by instinct instead of acting with reason. The Stoics urged us to practice tranquility, for only in stillness can we see the options before us and choose wisely. Calmness is the anchor that prevents the ship from being swept away in storms. Adaptability also grows by widening our connections with others. Living only in a small circle, we easily miss perspectives and insights from outside. But by opening to new ideas, experiences, and viewpoints, we gain information to adjust ourselves. This not only speeds adaptation, but enriches our mental map, making decisions more complete. Adaptability must also be paired with continuous learning. Every change, whether favorable or harsh, is an opportunity to learn. The adaptive do not see failure as the end, but as data for the next step. They do not chase absolute certainty, but growth through experience. Here lies the meeting point of strategic thinking and Stoic philosophy, using adversity as material, turning change into an opportunity to strengthen the mind and refine ability. Adaptability is one of the indispensable pillars of strategic thinking. It is the union of flexibility, alertness, preparation, courage, calmness, openness, and learning. When these qualities converge, we stand firm in change without being carried away. More importantly, we move forward not through luck, but through deliberate clarity. This is the art of living in a world that never stands still, where the Stoic does not resist the current, but walks with it on the steady ground of reason. 10. Influence and leadership. Influence and leadership are among the highest expressions of strategic thinking, for they extend beyond managing the self to shaping the environment and inspiring others. A true strategist cannot think and act only for themselves, for every decision exists within a vast web of relationships and cooperation. In the Stoic spirit, a leader is not one who stands above all, but one who guides through self-mastery. integrity, and understanding. Influence is not a tool of manipulation, but the reflection of inner strength manifested in one's way of living and acting. The foundation of lasting influence is trust. People only listen and follow when they see consistency between words and actions. A person may promise much, may speak with skill, but without steadiness and transparency, their influence fades quickly. By contrast, when action reflects principle and words reflect truth, trust forms naturally. In this way, influence is not forced, it is granted by the faith of others. Influence is also tied to controlled emotion. One cannot lead if they are swept away by anger, fear, or impulse. The Stoics held that self-mastery is the root of all power, for one who cannot govern themselves cannot govern any circumstance. Leadership in this sense means maintaining composure in crisis, keeping reason clear even when events turn chaotic. This inner stability creates safety and trust, drawing others willingly to follow. Deep influence also springs from connection and empathy. A leader does more than issue orders or design plans. They listen, understand concerns, hopes, and needs. Empathy is not yielding to every desire, but seeing the person behind the action, the motives and feelings beneath. This not only builds connection, but creates an environment where people feel valued and are ready to give their best. Another element of leadership is vision. A leader sees beyond the present, perceives the link between today's action and tomorrow's outcome. Vision need not be grand or distant, but it must be clear and communicable so that others can grasp it and move together. Once shared, vision becomes a common anchor that holds a group steady even amid turbulence. Vision is not only a map, but a flame that sustains perseverance. Enduring influence is not built on moments of brilliance, but on constancy over time. Leadership is not a single act, but a long thread of consistency. When others witness us holding to principle even in hardship, they come to believe our words are genuine. This steadfastness builds credibility, and credibility is the most precious capital of a leader. A decision may be right or wrong, but fidelity to values is what compels others to follow. In strategic thinking, leadership is not bound to titles. It does not demand official authority, but can be expressed from any position. Every individual can lead when they choose to live by principle, by reason, and by care for others. True influence is built on inner foundation, not social status. Thus, anyone can begin practicing leadership in the smallest spheres of life, family, work, or daily interactions. Influence and leadership are the intersection of self-mastery and empathy, vision and consistency, inner strength and the ability to inspire. The true leader does not impose but lets their life itself become a silent yet powerful call. In Stoic spirit, the leader is first the master of themselves, and through that presence, they inspire trust and imitation. This is the model of enduring influence, unshaken by change, strengthened by time, leading not by power, but by virtue. 11. Resilience. Resilience is one of the essential qualities of strategic thinking, for no plan is perfect enough to eliminate all obstacles. In life's journey, failure, loss, and disruption are unavoidable. The difference between those who collapse and those who continue lies not in who stumbles less, but in who knows how to rise after falling. In the Stoic spirit, resilience is not merely returning to one's former state, but becoming stronger for having endured adversity. At its core, resilience is the mindset that accepts hardship as an inevitable part of the journey. When a person believes life must always bend to their will, every setback becomes a shock. But when we accept that change is the nature of the universe, we are less surprised and less shaken. The Stoics trained their minds for the unexpected, not to nurture pessimism, but so that when hardship came, they wasted no time in complaint and instead sought adaptation and progress. This foundation makes recovery both swift and enduring. Resilience also demands mastery of emotion in the hardest hours. When disruption strikes, many react first with anger, fear, or despair. These emotions not only drain energy but cloud reason, leading to poor choices. The resilient do not deny emotion. They observe it from a distance, like watching a wave pass, and retain the freedom to act by reason. In this way, they preserve the clarity needed to find a way through chaos. Another vital element is the ability to redefine failure. If failure is treated as an end, the mind locks into paralysis. But if failure is viewed as data, as a stage of experimentation in a longer process, adversity becomes material for growth. The Stoics reminded us that true worth is not measured by achievements in comfort, but by how difficulty is used to shape character. By redefining failure, resilience becomes a forge of strength rather than a force of destruction. Resilience is also tied to discipline in sustaining small steps. After a setback, many rush with great effort to regain what was lost, only to exhaust themselves. True recovery, by contrast, comes from patiently rebuilding the foundation, one step at a time. A small act, a simple adjustment, repeated steadily, creates lasting momentum. This is why in Stoic teaching, constancy in daily effort outweighs bursts of short-lived exertion. Another essential part of resilience is clarity in separating what can be controlled from what cannot. In adversity, we easily fall into blame or obsession over what lies beyond our reach. This only wastes more energy. The resilient quickly narrow focus to their sphere of control. What can I change now? What must I release to preserve my strength? In doing so, they conserve resources for meaningful action instead of sinking into helplessness. Resilience also draws strength from positive memory. In difficulty, the mind forgets past victories and trials already overcome. But when we remind ourselves of achievements and past endurance, we build faith that the current struggle too is only a chapter, not the whole story. The resilient nurture these memories as reserves of inner power to keep moving forward. Resilience is the union of accepting adversity, mastering emotion, redefining failure, maintaining small disciplines, focusing on what can be controlled, and drawing from positive memory. It is not merely a skill of survival, but an art of growth through trial. In the Stoic spirit, resilience is not returning to where you began, but rising with a mind stronger, clearer, and more steadfast. With resilience, one not only safeguards their path, but gains the inner strength to go further, despite the storms of life. 12. Wise negotiation. Negotiation is an inseparable part of life and work, in relationships, and in daily situations. Yet most people approach negotiation as battle, measuring victory by who gains more. This mindset breeds tension, conflict, and loss of long-term value. Wise negotiation, in the Stoic and strategic spirit, is not about seizing short-term advantage, but about building balance, creating lasting value, and holding integrity. The wise negotiator enters dialogue with composure, reason, and the ability to shape outcomes that benefit not only themselves, but also the greater whole. At the core of wise negotiation lies preparation and self-awareness. No one can expect favorable results if they enter without knowing clearly what they truly need and what they are willing to release. Self-awareness shields us from being swept into emotion, pride, or greed. When we know what is non-negotiable and what can be flexible, we stand on solid ground, unshaken by outside pressure. This is the beginning of wisdom, to understand oneself before seeking to understand others. The next step in wise negotiation is the art of listening and observing. Many negotiators focus only on persuading, speaking endlessly to impose their view, forgetting that real strength lies in listening. By listening, we gather information, discern needs hidden beneath words, and notice subtle signals in responses. This awareness allows us not only to hear what is said, but to grasp what is unsaid. In this, we uncover common ground that opens cooperation instead of conflict. Wise negotiation also demands the ability to reframe problems. Stalemates occur when both sides cling to a single narrow perspective. By shifting the frame, the situation changes entirely. Instead of asking, who gets more, one may ask, what will let both sides advance? Reframing is not changing the subject, but expanding the view so that all parties see a path where the outcome can be richer for all. This transforms conflict into collaboration and makes results more sustainable. Another principle of wise negotiation is keeping reason above emotion. Emotion can push us into hasty concessions or harsh reactions that ruin opportunity. The Stoics emphasized that self-control is the root of strength. In negotiation, this means staying calm, resisting provocation or pressure, and keeping clarity intact. A steady mind makes words sharper, decisions sounder, and presents itself a positive force in the process. Wise negotiation also rests on the principle of long-term value. Some deals may bring immediate gain, but damage relationships and future opportunities. The strategist never sacrifices sustainability for short-term triumph. They weigh not only today's outcome, but its echoes in years to come. Thus, negotiation becomes not mere transaction, but the building of trust and credibility. And credibility, once secured, opens more doors than any temporary victory. A final but crucial element of wise negotiation is knowing when to stop. Not every negotiation must end in agreement. At times, silence or a strategic withdrawal is the best choice. Those who do not know when to stop waste energy until they lose even what they had. Those who stop at the right moment see it not as defeat, but as a wise decision to conserve resources and preserve position for future opportunities. This too is wisdom, discerning true victory from illusion. Wise negotiation is not the art of manipulation or clever tricks, but the union of self-awareness, listening, reframing, emotional mastery, long-term value, and timely restraint. When these elements converge, negotiation becomes collaboration rather than conflict. In the Stoic spirit, wise negotiation is the ability to keep virtue amid competing interests, to find balance between what we desire and what the world demands, and to create results that are useful, sustainable, and a reflection of inner maturity. 13. Foresight and Patience. A resilient strategic mind cannot lack two parallel capacities, foresight and patience. Foresight allows us to see beyond the present, to glimpse possibilities that may arise in the future. Patience allows us to hold steady, waiting for the right moment to act. If we have foresight without patience, we fall into haste, acting before the time is ripe. If we have patience without foresight, we may wait in vain, not knowing what we wait for. When trained and combined, these two qualities become sharp weapons for preserving clarity in a turbulent world. Foresight, at its most basic, is not prophecy or predicting exact events, but the habit of observing and analyzing to perceive emerging trends. It requires sensitivity to small but meaningful signals. Those with foresight are not swept away by the present picture, but pause to ask, if this trend continues, what will happen? If I choose this path, what will be the ultimate outcome? By asking such questions, they are not surprised by change, for the mind has already rehearsed many scenarios. Foresight is also tied to thinking in chains of consequence. A decision does not produce only one immediate result. It sets off a series of reactions. Those who foresee do not stop at the first effect, but continue to ask, and then what? From today's act, they envision 3 or 4 steps ahead and then choose the path that is optimal for the long term, not just for short-term gain. This is the trait that separates the wise actor from the rash one. Alongside foresight, patience is the strength that keeps the mind from being driven by urgency. In an age where everything is fast, many equate speed with success. But those with strategic minds know that some outcomes arrive only through patience, like a seed that requires time to sprout and grow. Patience does not mean needless delay, but the discernment to know when to act and when to wait. It is the deliberate restraint to avoid acting under emotion, saving energy for the more crucial step ahead. Patience is also the capacity to endure uncertainty. In the waiting, people often grow anxious and lose faith. The impatient seek to fill the void with reckless action, while those trained in patience see it as an opportunity to strengthen will. They do not let emptiness make them frantic, but use it to observe, learn, and prepare. In this way, patience becomes the bridge between foresight and action, ensuring that when the time arrives, we are ready in both mind and strength. The union of foresight and patience creates a rare balance. Those with foresight see many scenarios, but with patience, they do not rush into the first option. The patient wait for opportunity, but with foresight, they know when opportunity is truly here. This is why the two must walk together. One gives vision, the other endurance. Together they form the foundation for accurate and steady decisions. In Stoic spirit, foresight and patience also reflect a way of living that refuses to be victims of time. Time can make us hurried, restless, and weary. But those with foresight and patience turn time into an ally. They use foresight to move ahead, patience to avoid wasting strength on what is useless. Thus, they advance not by luck, but by deliberate preparation. Foresight and patience are 2 pillars of strategic thought. One shows the road, the other holds us steady until the road opens. With foresight, we are not surprised by the future. With patience, we are not consumed by the haste of the present. And when these 2 qualities unite, we walk calmly, firmly, ready for whatever comes, for true strength lies not in reacting quickly, but in preparing and waiting at the right moment. 14. Renewal and Creativity. In the growth of strategic thought, renewal and creativity are indispensable steps. The world is ever moving, and solutions that were sound yesterday may be outdated today. If we cling only to what is familiar, we fall into stagnation, complacency, and lose adaptability. Renewal and creativity, therefore, are not optional skills, but the very breath of survival, refreshing perspectives, shifting approaches, and opening possibilities unseen before. In Stoic spirit, this is not blind pursuit of novelty, but the courage to look back, to release what is obsolete, and to rebuild on the foundation of reason and integrity. Renewal begins with recognizing dead ends. Strategic thought cannot keep applying the same methods and expect different results. When we see prolonged problems, failing models, or ruts draining motivation, it signals the need for renewal. Renewal does not mean rejecting the past entirely, but choosing carefully, keeping what still holds value, discarding what no longer fits. This is difficult, for humans often cling to the familiar even when it serves them no more. But only by stepping beyond this false safety can we open the door to true growth. Alongside renewal, creativity becomes the driving force. Creativity is not limited to art. It is the ability to see new links between seemingly unrelated things. It is the capacity to ask different questions, reinterpret problems, and attempt solutions no one has tried. In strategy, creativity is not about impressing or appearing different, but about creating solutions that are real, lasting, and workable. Those who bring creativity into strategy are unafraid to shift lenses, unafraid to try and fail, knowing that such exploration nourishes the ability to go further. Renewal and creativity both rest on flexibility of thought. A rigid system, a closed mind, collapses when context changes. But a flexible system, one that renews itself, continues to operate and grow. The Stoics saw openness as a mark of wisdom, for they knew the world is never fixed. What we treat as truth today may prove illusion tomorrow. Thus, renewal and creativity are acts of humility, admitting we never know enough, that there are always new perspectives and solutions waiting. A key point in renewal and creativity is daring to challenge old assumptions. Often, it is our beliefs and familiar patterns that are the greatest barriers to change. The strategic thinker continually asks, is this still true? Could we do it differently? By questioning what seems obvious, we free ourselves from confinement and discover new possibilities. This is not reckless denial, but mindful practice, ensuring we are not imprisoned by our own outdated thinking. Renewal and creativity also require courage to act. Ideas left in the mind remain only imagination. Those who renew and create must dare to experiment, dare to fail, and dare to learn from failure. This aligns perfectly with Stoic teaching. Adversity and mistakes are not to be feared, but welcomed as material for training wisdom and virtue. When creativity is guided by discipline and integrity, it becomes a force that lifts us beyond old limits into higher maturity. Renewal and creativity are two sides of one living process. One is the courage to release what is old, the other the energy to unlock what is new. In strategic thought, they keep us from being trapped in worn-out ways, maintaining freshness in approach. In Stoic spirit, renewal and creativity are not about chasing novelty for ego, but about living awake, knowing when to change, when to rebuild, and when to forge entirely new paths. This is how the strategist not only survives, but leaves a lasting mark in the flow of time. 15. Strategic legacy. When the journey of strategic thinking reaches its final stage, the most important question is no longer, what have I achieved, but what will I leave behind? Strategic legacy is not merely visible accomplishments, but the enduring imprint on how others continue to think, act, and grow because of what we built. If all efforts stop at personal gain in the present, they soon vanish with time. But if shaped as a system that can sustain, develop, and expand, strategic thinking becomes part of a legacy, transcending the individual and living on as a lasting source of inspiration. A strategic legacy begins with vision beyond the self. A mature mind does not seek fleeting glory, but focuses on creating value that will endure after one's presence is gone. Such vision guides action not only by short-term goals, but by long-term durability, ensuring that every step today contributes to a larger structure that will continue into the future. This is not a useless sacrifice, but an expansion of awareness, seeing oneself as a link in humanity's long chain. Next, strategic legacy is sustained by building systems that function independently. One person may be skilled, but if everything depends on them, results disappear once they leave. By contrast, if thinking, methods, and principles are transmitted and embedded in clear processes, then even without the individual, the system can keep growing. This requires humility and patience, for instead of clinging to control, one must learn to delegate, share, and teach others to decide for themselves. This is how value is freed from the limits of a single life and becomes part of a shared foundation. Another core element of strategic legacy is value as the guiding compass. Without values, every system risks distortion. Core principles such as integrity, fairness, responsibility, and courage are the pillars that keep a legacy from straying over time. Values are invisible yet carry the greatest power, for they shape behavior when no one is watching. If they are deeply rooted, the legacy gains its own life force, spreading naturally across generations without coercion. Strategic legacy also includes the power to inspire. What we leave is not only models, rules, or principles, but also the spirit of living and the will to act. When others witness a path of resilience, steadfastness in trials, and a life lived with direction, they feel guided and encouraged to go further. Legacy is not an imposition, but an awakening of inner strength in each person, leading them to continue the path of growth and clarity. Finally, for a strategic legacy to endure, it requires humility in how we see ourselves. Those who wish to leave a legacy do not do so for praise, but to ensure that value and wisdom are not wasted. They understand that every contribution is small in the vast flow of time, and thus the most important task is to leave a foundation others can build upon. This humility is liberating, for it allows us to live and work not for ego, but for a meaning that transcends self. Strategic legacy is not measured by numbers or titles, but by its ability to continue, to function, and to inspire after we are gone. It is built from vision beyond time, self-sustaining systems, enduring values, the power to inspire, and humility. In the Stoic spirit, legacy is not about carving one's name into monuments, but about planting seeds of thought, discipline, and virtue into the soil of humanity. When those seeds sprout, grow, and spread, that is the clearest proof that strategic thinking has fulfilled its purpose. Strategic thinking in the Stoic spirit is not merely a skill that helps us advance in work or life. It is a way of living, a deliberate choice not to be swept away by the chaos of circumstance. It trains us in discipline of thought, endurance in action, and steadiness in the face of trial. My view is that anyone can cultivate this capacity, as long as they are willing to begin with small changes in daily habits. It is not a journey in pursuit of perfection, but one of continuous training, learning to correct mistakes, to adapt, and to grow. With patience in this process, each person builds an inner strength, a foundation solid enough to face any situation without losing themselves. If you find these reflections meaningful, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss the next content. Take this as a gentle reminder that you have the power to shape how you think, act, and build your life. And above all, the most valuable thing is not to move faster than others, but to walk in the right direction with calmness in your soul. See you in the next video.